It's always good to try new things and conduct experiments so that we can improve things for the future and just make things better for us as gardeners. And I'm going to be conducting an experiment this year with my potatoes with container size to see if it makes any difference. Now, there are other YouTube videos out there that conduct similar experiments with container size, but I'm going to be conducting an experiment myself to see the results for myself. Obviously the results may vary from person to person, and whilst this isn't a perfect experiment, I am going to try and make it as fair as possible, and hopefully it'll give us a good idea of which containers are better sizes to grow potatoes in. So I'm trying 4 different container sizes to grow these potatoes in. I've got a 10 litre container, a 15 litre container, a 20 litre container, and a 30 litre container. Now these are the containers which I usually use to grow potatoes in, but we're going to see what we can get from the smaller containers as well. It should be very interesting to see what happens. The variety which I'm going to be growing is these Cara potatoes, and I've tried to pick potatoes that are very, very similar in size and have the same amount of chits. I've taken excess chits off, and there's 3 chits on each potato. And yeah, they're not exactly the same size. I've not weighed them, but they're pretty much bang on the same size. I'm happy with those. Yeah, so that's what we've got there, just to show you guys, to make sure we're happy with those. That's what we're going to be doing. So in each container I'm going to be planting 2 of these potatoes, and I'm actually going to be planting them the exact same depth. I've got my hurry knife here, and I'm going to be planting them at a depth of around 6 inches. I'm just going to go in like that and plant the potatoes. The compost which I'm using, where is it? So the compost which I'm using to fill these containers is Grow More compost, which is a peat-based compost, and there is added feeds in there as well. But apart from that, there's no other fertilizers or anything going in these buckets. It's literally just going to be this compost and water. That is it. That is all I'm going to be doing here to make the test as fair as possible. I'm not going to be adding any potato fertilizer or any blood, fish and bone or anything like that. It's simply just the compost with the added nutrients that are already in it. So let's get started. So this location here gets a good bit of sun, same amount of sun as these other potatoes, to be honest with you. A good 6 hours of direct sun per day. So obviously I'm going to be growing them in the exact same area to make the test fair as well. So we'll start with the 30 litre bucket. Okay, so that is our 4 containers there. We've got our 10 litre container, 15 litre container, 20 litre container and 30 litre container, and I've filled them up to the first rim on them here. They're not completely to the top, but I actually ran out of compost, but they're pretty much filled. We've got our seed potatoes there, 3 chits on each one. The potatoes are about the same size, so we're going to be planting them 6 inches deep. Just used my hurry knife there as a measurement, about 6 inches. Here we go with the potato. Not exactly 6 inches, but you know, pretty much. Now obviously I expect that the smaller containers will definitely require more water. That is the thing that I'm concerned about. They're going to dry out incredibly fast. And to be honest, I don't expect much of a crop from the smaller ones. Okay, so there we go. There's our potatoes planted, 2 in each one, planted roughly 6 inches deep. Just multi-purpose compost there, grow more. So we'll come back in a few months and see what we've got. It's been a few months now since we planted these potatoes. The foliage started to yellow and die back, which is an indicator that they are reaching maturity and they're ready to harvest. So I thought today we're going to harvest them and see what we've got. I've been itching to find out what the results are of this test because I'm interested to know how they do. So I'm going to tip each bucket out into this wheelbarrow and we're going to weigh every single bucket, and I'm also going to be counting how many potatoes there are because I'm looking at the size of the potatoes and also the amount as well. Okay, let's go. So first, the 10 litre container. We're going to start off from smallest and work our way up to largest and see if there's any difference. Quite excited to see actually. This should be very interesting. I know quite a few people have done this experiment in their own way, but I'd like to do this myself as well and see what results I get. Anyway, okay, so this container dried out very quickly, which is understandable. I mean, I expected that, to be honest with you. You know, still some pretty decent potatoes though, actually. New potato size, really. They are quite small. Yeah. Okay, so as expected, the yield is quite embarrassing actually. It's not very good, that. Very small yield, new potatoes, and not that many of them really, so. So 590 grams of potatoes is what we've just harvested there from the 10 litre bucket. And that is 22 potatoes in total from that. Okay, let's crack on with the next one. So now we've got the 15 litre container. Okay, these potatoes are slightly bigger. Yeah, they are a little bit bigger. They're sort of like large new potatoes, not quite big enough to peel. So that is the 15 litre bucket. Nothing to write home about, to be honest with you. The potatoes are a little bit bigger than the 10 litre bucket ones, but honestly not a very big yield at all. We're going to weigh those as well. Okay, 740 grams from that one. 24 potatoes. Okay, so a little bit extra weight, couple more potatoes. The potatoes were slightly bigger than the other ones, so that is interesting. Now we're going to do the 20 litre container. I'm expecting another jump in yield if we continue in the same pattern. Yeah, much more in this bucket. Still not huge potatoes. Definitely a little bit better than the other two. Okay, so that's the 20 litre container, and again a little bit bigger than the other container. I think it seems to be that way anyway, but what did he weigh? Okay, I'm getting 910 grams there, so more than the last one. How many potatoes is that? 26 potatoes. Wow, so we've gone 22, 24, 26. Okay, now it's time to harvest the 30 litre container, the last one. These are the containers that I grow my potatoes in every year, and I get good results doing that. But let's see what we've got on this test. Not that big either, to be honest. But bear in mind, there's no fertilisers or anything added into these. It's just compost, nothing else. When I usually plant main crop potatoes, I put the compost in, but I also put well-rotted horse manure, bloodfish and bone, and Vitax potato fertiliser, and that makes a big difference. So this is just purely based off just compost, and we're just going off the container size here, gauging how they do based on that, not what we're adding to the containers. That's a half decent size one. Yeah, I mean, not great really actually, but important things to note. They were planted later than usual. You know, they were planted a good few weeks later than the other main crop potatoes over there, and they were also planted without any fertilisers or anything, just compost. But I mean, they're not too bad. They're definitely better than the 10, 15 and 20 litre buckets, just by looking at them anyway. So we're now going to weigh them and see what the weight is. I'm expecting them to be a couple of 100 grams more, to be honest. Okay, so 1.07 kilos I've just got with that. 28 potatoes. Look at that, that is really interesting. So we've got 22 potatoes with the 10 litre bucket, we've got 24 potatoes with the 15 litre bucket, we've got 26 potatoes with the 20 litre bucket, and we've got 28 potatoes with the 30 litre bucket. Now yes, I could have got bigger potatoes, especially in the 30 litre bucket, had I planted them earlier at the same time as my other main crops. You know, these were planted like something like a month later than the other ones. And I also could have got better results had I put fertiliser in there, as I usually do. Main crop potatoes are heavier feeders than your first and second earlies, and they do require much longer to grow. This is just a test based on the size of the container, just to give us an idea of what we can expect from each size container. And clearly there is a difference between each one, which, to be honest, I expected, because main crop potatoes do require much more room to grow, and a smaller container means less room for them to grow, less potatoes because there's less space obviously, and there's less nutrients available, less water available. The container will dry out much quicker as well. I think it just comes down to the most obvious thing: less space means less yield. There's less space for the potatoes to grow, as opposed to planting 2 in there and getting smaller potatoes. So the 10 litre container yielded 22 potatoes, coming out at 590 grams. The 15 litre container yielded 24 potatoes, bringing the weight to 740 grams. The 20 litre container yielded 26 potatoes, bringing the weight to 910 grams. And then finally, the 30 litre container yielded 28 potatoes, bringing our overall weight to 1.07 kilograms. So just over a kilo with the 30 litre bucket. So to conclude, yes, it does make a difference, the size of the container, but I would say there's not all that much difference between the 20 litre container and the 30 litre container. I always grow them in the 30 litre ones, but if you've got some 20 litre containers, you could probably get away with growing some potatoes in them, especially your first and your second earlies, which require less space anyway. I always plant 4 seed potatoes when it comes to the early potatoes. I plant 4 in a 30 litre container, so you probably could get away with that, especially because your first and second earlies are usually harvested as new potatoes anyway. Or maybe you do want to grow main crop potatoes. You could probably just stick 1 seed potato in a 20 litre container and get a decent crop. So a clear difference. The bigger the container, the better when it comes to growing potatoes. The more room, the better. So I hope you found this video interesting, and I hope you learned something from it. So that's all for now, guys. Remember to like, subscribe, comment as well. The engagement really means a lot, and it helps the algorithm as well. And if you've got any suggestions for experiments in the future, or about this experiment, it wasn't a perfect experiment and there are other things I could have done to make it a more fair test, but it does give you an idea of the results between each container. So that's all for now, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Happy gardening and stay safe.